majority of the community loves the Bio Elementary Schools, walking distance, and that's what makes our town great, unique. Walking is an alternative, but once the winter months come, everybody gets dropped off, and when it rains or it snows, it's even more chaotic. Going up Lee's Avenue in the morning between St. John's and St. North, it's tough. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's hard. So we try to, give leeway to, the parents to drop them off.
Oh, you can finish.
But, it's difficult.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Does anybody have any other thoughts? Mr. Farrell?
Just as far as walking, this is really an idea that was promoted by Kim Brooks, who's here somewhere, I'm sure, and I want to take credit for something she posted at some point. But it was this walking bus, whatever you call it, where you coordinate walking your kids. I know people do it already, but it perhaps can be promoted in a more organized fashion.
It happens in Ottawa,
so that you can have your kids, if you can't walk them yourselves, walk with other people. It seems fairly simple, just organizing it, I think.
Thank you. Somebody have any other thoughts?
I did informally speak to one of our board members about this this past summer, and they let me know that they did do a study. I mean, they looked at this, they researched it, they examined the routes, they saw the danger areas, and decided that this wouldn't be something that would be beneficial because of the safety hazards. And I think what the issue though was that it just wasn't really communicated out. That this finding that the board found. So there's still parents upset that their kids can't bike to school, and I think it was just a communication breakdown.
And so I'll give you a minute to follow up on that. What would be the issue then if it were communicated? Because it didn't sound like there was a discussion that it was a communication issue. It sounded like there was a position issue.
Well, it wasn't communicated out from the board
that there was
of the finding, and it determined that this would be too much of a safety concern.
Gotcha. Thank you. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of have a difference of opinion. I mean, I would have to read the study, but I'm a big biking advocate. And I think that it's feasible. I think there's probably a compromise in between what maybe some families want with any age group and it being non-existent. So I mean, I think there's probably some dialogue back and forth there that can take place, but biking is healthy. It's healthy for the child, it's healthy for their environment, and as a school district, and we're encouraging healthy lifestyles, I feel like it's kind of a little bit hypocritical to
Thank you.
then say we can't do that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Radesky, 30 seconds if you want.
The walking thing would be much more beneficial than the bike. Recently at the high school and middle school, we recently just closed out Cambridge Avenue for arrival and dismissal due to the fact that a student was struck. So, the ultimate safety of the children is the most important. So, I'm all about walking, but biking is, like I said, totally a safety hazard.
Thank you. This next one's going to be for everybody. Mr. Rodson, we'll start down there with you. Local live, sir. Yeah.
All right.
And it concerns the opportunities for outdoor play, recess, and the general condition of the playgrounds at the elementary schools or the school facilities. I'd like to go around and let everybody answer. We'll give everybody 60 seconds if they want it to just please describe your thoughts on the role of unstructured play, outdoor time, free time for part of the school day for particularly elementary age children, and possibly in other forms higher up the chain.
Sure.
And also, just again, as a second part to that, if you would direct some of your commentary towards the facilities themselves as you understand them throughout the district, and where or what improvements might facilitate them.
Sure.
Thanks.
I mean, obviously, that's a great idea. I mean, get kids out as much as possible, and realizing, of course, that there are things that there's teaching that has to happen during the day. Certainly some of that can happen outside. And I know some of that actually is happening at Zane now with the amphitheater, and they're doing some classes, science things, and things of that nature outside. I think going back to the facilities thing that was kind of the idea when we looked at the whole picture and the scope of, we call it a stadium project, but it's really not that. It's a comprehensive plan district-wide. And we saw what was going on in Zane, and what's starting at Newby, and that is something I think that would really benefit all the schools. So that's why, I mean, that is, for me, at least with that project, that is a key portion of it, that all the schools have similar facilities like that, so there can be outside instruction.
Thank you, that's time. Appreciate it. Mr. Wall?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the whole transformation at Zane, and Brenda Berg and her team, I apologize, I don't know the other woman's name that was there at the meeting last month, presented their rendering of what can happen at Newby. And I think once those structures are in place, it's important to have something to go with it, a program. And one thing that you can use is structured play. And structured play is building social and emotional skills through play outside. And having this in place instead of just a general recess of kids running around or playing kickball for 20, 30 minutes, is where you want to see that follow-up after you have that type of structure and playground in place.
So just so that I understand, you're saying that structured play is important to the children as much as, or separate or distinct from kickball or
No, not
Okay.
separately, but having that type of structure available for students. There's always time for kickball, obviously, on the playground. With multiple grades out at the same time, it can be, alternate days. Some days you're doing structured play, some days you're free play. But having that structure outside for recess is important.
Thank you. Mr. Deskey.
I agree with structured, non-structured, as long as they're out there playing in recess, moving around, getting exercise. It's something that kids to do extracurricular activities after school, so getting them moving and getting them out and about at all the elementary schools is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott.
Not enough time for me with this subject. There's structured play, outdoor play, big body play, physical, active, engaging curriculum are not mutually exclusive. Kids could be outside moving and learning at the same time with an engaging curriculum. And outdoor play, it really is a learning opportunity. And so for me, I think that what has happened at Zane, which is wonderful, really the board could take a more leadership role in expanding that across the board. There are tons of grants available for natural playscapes, for designing learning environments outside. There's a lot of resources available, and I think that the board should take a leadership role in doing it for the entire district, rather than leaning on a couple parents here and there to kind of get the ball rolling at specific sites.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell.
I certainly agree with expanding the project like Zane to all the schools as much as possible. And it's already been mentioned by Dave about the fact that we've raised that as part of the potential proposal to improve all the facilities across all the schools, and that's exactly why we raised it, so that all of our schools can experience something as great as what's going on at Zane right now. As far as the time in recess, I certainly think it's extremely important, and get creative with getting them out for instruction also. But again, that takes a lot of organization by our principals and teachers. So we need to start with them and not just bring this to them as a package already done. And I'm just a little concerned about that if we go too far without first talking to those players, because there's a lot involved in making that kind of change.
Thank you. Ms. Becker.
The disadvantage of going last is you want to stay ditto to most of what people have said. But I think it is important that if we have not completed a comprehensive plan, that we do that. There is a lot of research out there that supports, as Clinton has been saying, the ideas of outdoor play and learning. Movement, just getting up out of your seat. The things that we have seen, Michelle Obama, for instance, endorse so many activities about young people getting involved, getting active, becoming physically fit. I think it's really important that we find the opportunity to do that and use some of the current research that is available and make sure that we're offering a comparable plan at all schools. And maybe it is a project that the zone PTA could be reactivated more and be involved with putting together.
Thank you. We'll go right back down the line to everybody again, and this time we'll start with you. And this is sort of something I feel is at the root of a lot of the issues that this particular board will be facing. Would you describe, if you could, and everyone will have 60 seconds for this, how you believe it is most effective for a Board of Education to communicate generally with the public, and what would be your strategy for communicating with the public if you were elected?
I think Collingswood is a community that really values the opportunity to communicate. It's something we do, it's something that we encourage, it's something that we have seen evidence from the mayor and our commissioners and how we have meetings. I think it's important that I have a few ideas. One, I think there needs to be opportunities for the board to be available for community forums that are exclusive from the meeting. Sometimes with all the issues that have to be dealt with at the meeting, it may be good to plan them. Second, I think it's important that the board consider moving from school to school. And so we're in different locations when we have meetings so that people, in each of the areas can come about and see that. I also think that we can capitalize a little bit more on social media. I've learned a little bit about social media in the past couple of weeks, and I think it's an important medium that we could use more in order to get the word out amongst people. I think we need to be transparent, and I think we need to make sure that we're keeping people well informed.
Thank you, Mr. Farrow.
I'll start with the last idea that Ray, and I'm not going to take credit because he already said it, but the social media thing, I think that we as the board and the schools need to take a little more leadership on that issue as opposed to just responding to what comes from those mediums. And it's a very difficult thing to do, but I think it's something we can get a little more creative about. Because otherwise, the formality of the meetings, it's exactly that. There is a lot of formality to it. And to read the minutes of the meeting, I wouldn't expect anybody to sit there and do it. I wouldn't pay you to do it. So perhaps if there were some summaries we could provide in a more easily communicated, read fashion. Yes, less abstract. That could be a way in which we could be a little more effective on that issue. But also, people coming to our meetings, I would encourage a lot more in terms of attendance, and that certainly would help to have some more comments right there at the meetings.
Thank you. That's time, Mr. Cronin.
Sure. I mean, for me, obviously there needs to be a high level of communication and a high level of transparency, but that communication to me shouldn't happen sort of after decisions are made. I feel like the family or the community should be actively engaged in decision-making processes. We do that a lot in Head Start. We actually have a parent policy council that works in conjunction with our nonprofit board and myself, where these decisions have to be kind of floated by families before we put them in policy and rubber stamp them. And certainly I think that there's opportunities. It's already written into the board bylaws and policies that we can acknowledge parent groups and include them into the processes of developing policy. And I think that's an important part of it. And certainly we should be embracing technologies. Families shouldn't have to just be able to show up on a Monday night at 7 o'clock. A lot of families work. People can attend meetings now wirelessly. We can have video. They can type in questions. And I don't think that social media should necessarily sort of be bastardized. I think that it should be embraced as a way to really bring in a lot more engagement.
Thank you. Mr. Desmond.
Communication is definitely important. Keep improving that communication with the public. I know that Dr. Oswald is announcing Showcase, which is the opportunity for community members to come into each one of the schools, not just the one where your child attends. And the person, you can come into our school and have the opportunity to sit down with the school leader and superintendent. You can see our schools in action, which is a good way to get out there to the public. I know Dr. Oswald finalizing dates, about one per month until the end of the year starting. It should be coming up soon.
Thank you. Mr. Wall.
Clayton touched on this. We do have board policy that specifically states, a parent or community groups to be more active in taking a role in, they're a stakeholder. They are a stakeholder in this district, and they should have a voice before, we're at our first or second reading. This is going to clear up some transparency. This is going to help clear up some lines of communication, and I think that's one of the areas that our district does struggle with. And this is one of the major points that I feel is as a board member, I would take an active role to making sure it happens.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson.
Yes, I'll apologize in advance. I'm reading straight from board goals for this year, and I'm reading straight from it only because I have part in writing it. Some of the things we specifically talked about for communication this year as goals is a coordinated online presence with improved information on the websites, calendars, articles, things along those lines. A social media presence. We're clearly already on Twitter. In fact, some parents complain they get too many tweets from the district. Minimum of weekly updates. We talked about a minimum of 3 district newsletters during the year. We also talked about, similar to what the borough does, having 2 public forums that will be education specific, school district specific throughout the year. And one of the things that we also are going to do, or at least I'm planning planning to do, once we set the new calendar at the beginning of the year, is to rotate the board meetings throughout the district all year. So it won't be at Zane all year, it'll be in all of our buildings at different points.
Thank you very much. One of the other things I'm going to send around down the line for everybody again, and Mr. Ross, we'll take it from you first time, go back down the way, is the question of the achievement gap. That there is a disparity in achievement among Collingswood students that is, I guess it is socially ordered, it may be demographically ordered in other ways. Could you just describe your understanding of whether there is an achievement gap that exists in the district? If there is, what's the district's policy, or should the district's policy be on resolving it? And what are some of the supports and strategies that would address any such thing?
Well, to go to the end of your question first, absolutely, it should be a policy to address it. You know, any achievement gap is, you know, unacceptable, for lack of a better word. I can tell you this is sort of a top priority. It is something, once the district testing report came out, we saw the numbers, we talked exclusively or extensively about this during committee meetings. In fact, at the last board meeting, they talked about the PLC, the group of teachers that's going to get together, is going to strategize about how to attack this. I spoke with our director of academics and Mr. Kolick. Frankly, he has, and this is going to sound like an excuse, but it's really not. You know, there's major concerns with the test that statewide. In fact, there was an article out today.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We'll go back to you.
I'll get back to that.
Thank you, Mr. Wall.
Yeah, this is going to be tough to say in a short amount of time. But, so I think, I mean, it is. I mean, it should be a longer question for all of us. But differentiation is key. And knowing the skill deficits of our students and targeting this. I think at the elementary school, we do a good job at this. We have guided reading groups. But I think at the middle school and high school, this is where it's more of an issue. And you know, it's not a new problem in the district. It seems to be now that the public is more aware of it, so there's more push to make sure that we're resolving this issue.
I'll give you more time if you got more time. I don't want you to be jammed up, man.
You know, and it's tough. I mean, we see this in Camden and being on the lower end of it. And it's hard to say that putting more assessment in place is the answer, but having interim assessments, maybe 3 times throughout the year, is where you can really have a benchmark, and you see the middle ground, and then you see your summative at the end of the year. And while you're using the data from these, this is where you can really find those skills that you need to focus in on that's going to guide your instruction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Desky.